I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and start writing, typing, rewriting. That's the worst thing in the world, rewriting. I wanted to get up at that time of the morning where I'd be out of my wife's way. I'm not the most pleasant person in the world when I start rewriting. Start changing my lovely words around. But I don't do that too much anymore. I wait now until she goes off to work, which is usually pretty early. I try to write at least 4 hours a day. I try to get 10 or 12 pages finished. Sometimes I can do that in an hour and a half to 2 hours, but not very often.
In your 12 years as a reporter for the Alabama Journal, what would you consider to be the biggest stories that you've broken?
I guess the biggest one, and I didn't just break it, but you broke part of it too, was the James Earl Motley case.
A lot of people have forgotten about that.
That's right. People forget easy. That was a case where a young black soldier from Vietnam came back home to Wetumpka, was with some friends. They were stopped on the side of the highway between Montgomery and Wetumpka, and a deputy sheriff pulled him out of the car and beat him to death, is what it amounted to. The deputy sheriff later testified to this in federal court. Of course, they had a no bill in the Elmore County grand jury. He was not even indicted. The next day, the FBI got him, Justice Department brought him to trial. He stood trial in U.S. District Judge Frank Johnson's court. He was found not guilty by a jury of his peers after he sat on the stand and testified to having killed James Earl Motley.
He said he did it.
Yes, he said he did.
Your first book published.
Yeah. Right. And you can imagine picking it up, that first one, holding it. I mean, it's something solid and whole, and I guess it's akin to having a baby or something, you know. It's there, and nobody can ever take that away from you. It's different from the temporary feeling of writing for a newspaper that, you know, today's news is gone as soon as you read it, as soon as you write it, you know. And sometimes you have to write it too fast, and sometimes you might hurt some people unintentionally because you have to do things fast and on the spur of the moment. In writing a book, you sit and you weigh, and you know, sometimes you do it fast, but at the same time you always have that chance to go back and look at it, and you're your own editor, really.
What kinds of things are you working on now, and what direction will Wayne Greenhaw, the author, take?
Norman, I'm working on a nonfiction book with two professors at the University of Alabama. Book on about Frank Johnson and his life and what he's all about and his history. And of course, he's just been named to director of the FBI. And I think it'd be a very interesting book, especially in the sense that I also wrote this book on George Wallace, and their relationship through the years has been very interesting. And it's another chapter in the history of Alabama, which is also real good, I think. I mean, I feel good about writing that sort of thing. Also, I'm doing a novel now. It's a very long novel. It's about political life in
Alabama.
In Alabama, yeah. I'm not saying it's Alabama, but it's it's about the South and the southern state, and could very well be Alabama, just as it could be any other southern state.
The man in this photograph was wanted by the Montgomery Police Department for a series of armed robberies in this town. This photo was taken after Lonnie Benjamin, the Montgomery Police Department artist, drew this picture of the man. He was identified by witnesses, and he was later arrested because of this drawing by Detective Benjamin. For more than 6 years, Benjamin has been the chief artist for the Montgomery Police Department, and a lot of his work has resulted in the arrest of people who have committed crimes in the city of Montgomery. Chief of the Robbery Homicide Division, Lieutenant Don Terry, is with us, and he says that Benjamin's work is very important to the apprehension of people who have committed many crimes, including robbery, rape, and some murders. How effective is a police artist to the Montgomery Police Department, Lieutenant Terry?
Well, Norman, it obviously can be the most important single piece of evidence in a crime against a person, in that if we get a good composite drawn up and if we identify the suspect at an early stage, this puts us ahead of the game, so to speak, as well as take the culprit off the street. So it would be probably the most single important piece of evidence that we can obtain.
Detective Benjamin, when a crime is committed and you don't have a photograph of the person who allegedly commits this crime, what do you do? How do you get your first ideas of what to sketch?
Norman, the investigating officers at a scene, they will gather the witnesses to the incident together and make individual statements by them. After they've done this, they supply me with the witnesses who are the best eyewitnesses to the incident. I take these witnesses into a private office separately, one at a time, and start a drawing. I don't just start out the drawing just as a basic picture. I let them build the picture to me one step at a time. For example, I'll start out with the hair of a subject, which to me is an important feature of the suspect. After I've drawn the hair, then I move to the shape of the face, whether it be a narrow face, a fat face. And as I'm drawing this, the witness is explaining to me what the subject looked like. And all through the conversation, I keep telling them to make the corrections as they see them as I go along. After I've drawn the hair and the shape of the face, and I get the agreement of the witness that this does look like the subject's face, then I will add a very normal or average spot on the drawing where the eyes would be, and I start next with the nose, which was an area which most witnesses can tell me about.
Why are they so sure about the nose?
I don't know, and it's funny that a lot of women can even tell you the color of the eyes, but it's just something that you go as you pick up.
Is that right? Women will remember the color of the eyes?
It's strange, but they do. Well, I prefer to call myself an investigator.
Right.
But I would do these drawings at anyone's request to help solve a crime, and that's basically the purpose of them. Not to flatter me in any way, but to assist investigators to make an identification of someone who it may not be. For example, we normally do the drawing of someone to eliminate suspects in a case. It may not be the identical person that we arrest, but however, you see, we can take a drawing and eliminate hundreds of thousands of people by just that drawing.
What, in your opinion, is the most important case in your 6 years that you have helped solve through a drawing?
I think the two nurses that were attacked in Oakwood Cemetery about 3 years ago was a good one. And also, I think about 4 years ago, we had a subject in Elmore County who had assaulted and raped 6 Montgomery women, and I did a number of drawings of that particular subject. I'm real proud of those captures.
Now, you made a drawing during our conversation here. Who is this guy?
This is a real notorious criminal we're looking for right now in Montgomery.
Is that right? Okay, we'll just let people make up their own minds who that might be.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Corporal Detective Lonnie Benjamin, a man who uses his pen to help solve crimes here in the city of Montgomery.
about it. It is being dealt with, and we will keep the peace in the streets of Montgomery. To come to Goodwin Junior High School, I think that this obviously was
And that's in what district?
District 1.
District 1.
That's one of
And
them.
it's very close to the borderline of District 9 and District 1.
So very close.
So if we're going to talk about traffic.
Places that we will need to locate them. Carver High School had fair response, but not what we had hoped it would have. The Carter Hill Shopping Center at Hall and Carter Hill.
I wish I could say that I'm very happy to be here. But as it is, that I'm going to try to talk to you in a few minutes about one of the housing projects that most people have been talking about. But if you ride through the rest of the project, you'll find that there are no difference between Young Folk Village than the other housing project. I'm here because of the fact that I'm concerned about the people down there.
National Bank again on Carter Hill Road and Old Farm. This location has consistently had good response.
Have you tried that yet?
I have asked the announcements that have been engaged in at some of the places, but Highway 80 and the Eastern Bypass and TG and Y, which
for the next 30 days are above normal rainfall. To set you straight on the normal rainfall, in most parts of Alabama, the normal rainfall for this 30-day period is 3 to 4 inches, excluding southwest Alabama, which is 5 to 7 inches. We expect a little bit above normal rainfalls for this period, and indications are that we may pretty well hit this forecast. For instance, Montgomery, so far this month we've had 3.41 inches of rain. The normal is 3.47, and we have another week to go yet.
It appears to the layman, people who are not that educated about the atmospheric conditions and rainfall predictions, that the rain has come all at once. We had a sort of a drought, and now it's raining practically every day. Why is that?
Well, there's a couple reasons for this. We did have a dry period in most sections of the southern portions of the United States. We're getting up right now into a period where we have a situation where we're getting frontal systems coming down out of the north a little bit early compared to what they normally would. Also, down in the southern sections, close to the coastal areas, we're being influenced by fringes of weak tropical waves which move westward across the Gulf of Mexico. For instance, yesterday, New Orleans had quite heavy rainfall, the Mobile area, and this is the reason for the heavy rainfall down in that area. But with the combination of early seasonal fronts coming down and a combination of the little weak disturbances moving across the Gulf, you can expect the south portion of the state and also the other portions of the state to have a little bit above normal rainfall.
And I had others that would, as he said, would be zero. We would make no point whatsoever with it, not knowing what this unlearned.
Well, there's two major factors. The drought this year, we had no rain from April up until close in July. And then the worm situation, the army worms moved in. And in spite of spraying and all the chemicals we could use, it was still, the worm just stripped the corn completely of the leaves. All was left was a stalk.
Most cattle were growing actually feed up a little. Here, this is certainly true. I think maybe the public has been misled at the point that they feel.
I don't have a question, but I would like to thank you for the
We certainly are not asking for the relief to replace this drought, that we couldn't ask the commission to establish a price that would put us back in the same economic conditions that we were a year ago. But we feel like the market conditions that surround Alabama, that we would be entitled to ask for a price that would be, competitive with this price. Because if we in Alabama do not produce this milk, it will be imported from other areas. And when you get the cost of the milk in those areas and put transportation cost on it, then we're asking for a price that would be comparable to this.
Mr. Springer, from the distributor's point of view, what is needed and how do you view the situation?
Well, from the distributor's point, we do not have resale price control now since January of '77. Schools are being bid on for the first time. So when we bid on school milk for this coming school year, 77, 78, we're bidding on the basis of paying our farmers $11.25 a hundredweight. We're asking the commission that if they do increase the producer or the farmer's price, that they not increase it on our sales to schools, because we will be locked in by a contractual arrangement to sell to schools for a whole 9-month period based on the old price. Secondly, we are asking that a separate price be set for farmer's milk used in buttermilk, because it's cheaper to make buttermilk from non-fat milk powder. It's equally as wholesome. We suggest that it will stimulate the use of milk in Alabama in buttermilk if they equalize the price with the non-fat milk powder sources, so as to not be an incentive to use the latter rather than using Alabama-produced fluid milk.
With an extreme drought, and it started when we alluded to earlier this morning. But here in Montgomery County, simply lost because we did not get a stand at all due to the drought. Also, many producers here in the county, especially dairymen, and we are village for raising and hay at this time, hoping to sort of capitalize on the rains that came in July.
And I might say to you, Martha, that the only thing that might compare with that generous introduction is my appreciation of it. Or I could Jericho the South beheld. I say we.
You can understand. Now there's a delegation from Silicon and they're staying in the back. All of Silicon people stand.
A program at the park in which trails were constructed, picnic facilities were spruced.
We look forward to a productive joint effort. Now, Mr. Baker will make your award for your wall,
as well as the approach to which
we're entering a new era of progress and development in the South, and also a new era of conservation. And it's the old story of to have and to hold. We want all these things, and then we also want to maintain the beautiful environment that the South has. And that, of course, is where Bob and I work together with the other interior agencies and with the states and with private groups like this group here today in a conservation policy, conservation program. I think it's great that Reynolds Aluminum and many other private enterprises will be here today to demonstrate what the private sector can do in conservation. But we can have it all through cooperation.
We are going to operate from a 50 front, and our defensive front should average around 210 pounds. Of course, now we are going to use our best people there, because we feel that if you can keep an opponent from scoring, that you will not lose the ball game, in other words. So this is our philosophy there.
What do you think? You think defense will be your strong point this year?
I'm hoping it will, because we are a defensively orientated school. This is where we're going to place our best people, as I said before. So I'm hoping that it does work for us.
Come on, big boy.
Maggie, boy.
Hold it.
What's wrong with you, Skipper? All right. Yeah. Down! Let go! Get up, bigger! There you go, good and wide.
Composite 12 Countries News Magazine program this week looks at the South in art, transportation, environment, tourism, and more. I'm Bob Howell, inviting you to join your host this week, Dick Bird, as he takes a look at the Southern art and Southern wisdom of Hubert Schubtrein. The latest idea on how to draw tourists to Montgomery and to other Southern areas, and a night vision of a Southern railroad battle that's just beginning. Composite for 12 Countries, Saturday at 6:30 on WSFA TV.
Judge, what is it in your background that gives you the managerial know-how to run an agency with some 8,500 agents and 20,000 employees when your office is?
Well, I listened to Judge Bell in his news conference a while ago.
This is the normal aorta, which is the main blood vessel that supplies the blood to the abdomen and to the legs. It comes down through the middle of the abdomen, and branches come off of the aorta to supply the intestines and the kidneys. And then there are little blood vessels that come off to go to the back. These go down to each leg. Now, an aneurysm is a dilatation or an enlargement of this blood vessel due to arteriosclerosis, so that it will balloon out. And there are all different varieties of this. But the normal one, or the average aneurysm, is just an enlargement of this portion of the aorta, which comes off below the arteries going to the kidneys, and below the arteries that would go off to the intestine. And this is basically what an aneurysm is. The operation to correct an aneurysm is to put in a graft. You come above this aneurysm here. Sometimes you can just take out this and put in what we call a straight graft from here to this area right here. But more commonly, it's necessary to bring the graft either down on these big blood vessels going down to the legs, and sometime even lower down in the leg. You open up this with an incision and clean out. Usually there's a lot of blood clot, narrowing the opening in here, and you clean that out. And then sew in a Dacron graft. It's a very thick Dacron material which has a special weave in it to make the lining regenerate in such a way that it doesn't peel loose from the force of the blood coming down. And that graft would be sutured in right here with a row of sutures, and then it would come down and be sutured in either at this level, and it would just come down like this and replace that. And this graft has an accordion-like effect in it so that you can stretch it out like that. And this is what an aneurysm is, and basically the operation to perform it that's performed to replace an aneurysm.
About 100 Montgomeryans undergo the same surgical procedure to correct aneurysms that Judge Johnson went through in Houston, Texas today. Dr. Durer says that it takes about 6 weeks to recuperate from such surgery, and he says if all goes well in Judge Johnson's case, the judge should be able to return to work in about 6 weeks. And then eventually, if he is confirmed, he will go to Washington as the new FBI director. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Baptist Medical Center.
Hello, this is Dave Rickey reporting live from the new Riverfront Park at the end of Lower Commerce Street in downtown Montgomery, where in about an hour or so, formal dedication ceremonies will take place to officially open the park. Right now, an open house is being held around the park and aboard the General Richard Montgomery riverboat. In about an hour, 3 separate musical groups will begin the entertainment portion of the program. All of this taking place right here at the new Riverfront Park on Lower Commerce Street. We'll have a live update at 6 o'clock. In other news this evening, police say 3 persons have been arrested and more than 14 pounds of marijuana have been confiscated on the parking lot of a Haleyville motel. Governor Wallace today formally asked the Alabama Power Commission to substantially cut Alabama Power Company rates, and Tom Ventress today took charge of the State Finance Department, succeeding Acting Director James Solomon Jr. And Bullitt County Planner Sandy Trammell says Lieutenant Governor Jerry Beasley has promised to help the county get a minimum security prison proposed by the State Board of Corrections. Bob will have details of these plus other stories on tonight's WSFA 6 o'clock report.
That the Department of Corrections hasn't even made a survey of state agencies to see what goods and services they need. And when it hasn't even paid any attention to recommendations from top prison industry consultants who've come into Alabama and made recommendations, then I find it difficult to fault the legislature for not appropriating money for prison industries. The executive and the legislature have got to work together in this process. And if they don't, the process isn't going to work. And even if the legislature enacts legislation to appropriate more money, it isn't going to be well spent. For another example, I think there are about $10 million available in bond issue money for the construction of prisons. But I'd like to see the kind of plans which will indicate that this money is going to be spent wisely and the kind of construction is going to be put up which is needed.
Is money or is money not the answer to the prison problems?
It's not the whole answer. Obviously, you got to have money, but money alone isn't going to be the answer. The money has got to be well spent, and the prisons have got to be well managed. Otherwise, the money will be squandered, and we'll have problems very similar to ones which produced such a barbaric situation that the state lawyers had to admit in open court that the prisons were operated in such a manner as to violate the cruel and unusual punishment prohibitions in the federal Constitution.
Let's get him to cheat a little bit. Cheat toward the camera. Look out this way.
Oh, you're talking to me?
Yeah, cut away.
Yeah.
You want me to look that way?
No, sir, I don't think you're going to get a picture of George, right?
Look any way I want.
Hope it didn't delay y'all too much with our equipment failures.
Just an hour and a half.
Well, you can't help those things.
Okay. They told you when to be there, right?
This is what will be the entire program is going to be a half hour.
Hopefully.
Hopefully we won't say an hour.
Did you happen to see in Newsweek this column that Ron Nesson wrote advising Jody Powell about what you